I once asked a 74-year-old patient of mine, a widower living alone in a quiet suburb of Montana, if he still felt like a man. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I still want to touch myself, but sometimes I'm not sure if it's to feel or just to prove I'm not dead." My name is Dr. Brian Smith. I've been a men's health specialist for nearly 30 years, and in the thousands of conversations I've had over my career, there's one truth I've rarely heard spoken aloud, but I've seen it over and over again in the eyes of men past 70. Something is slowly slipping away. Not just sexual function, but the feeling of being alive. Masturbation, something that once felt simple, natural, even ordinary, takes on an entirely different meaning after 70. It's no longer just a physical act. It becomes something more fragile, more sacred. A quiet line between survival and sensation, between loneliness and longing, between memory and identity. And in that silence, many men are unknowingly making subtle mistakes. Mistakes that slowly erode their health, their vitality, even their sense of manhood, without them realizing it. Have you ever found yourself doing it just out of habit, only to feel empty afterward, or breathless, or vaguely unsettled? Have you ever wondered if you're doing it for pleasure, or because the loneliness just got too heavy to bear? If you have, then stay with me today, because it might be the smallest, most innocent habits in your private moments that are silently draining your lifespan, your memory, and your joy. This is not a lecture, and it's not here to make you feel shame. This is an honest conversation between two men who've lived a little, between you and me. One man who's inside his own aging body, and another, me, who's watched many others walk through this chapter of life without fully understanding what's happening to them. Today, I'm going to show you the most common mistakes I've seen older men make when it comes to self-pleasure. These aren't loud or dangerous mistakes, but they quietly destroy, from the prostate to emotional intimacy, from your sleep to your memories, from your sense of masculinity to your ability to love yourself. But before we begin, I want to ask you for something small. If you're watching this video and you're willing to go on this journey with me, click like and subscribe so you never miss another piece of essential health advice. And if you've ever wondered what really happens when older men stop touching themselves the right way, leave a simple comment below. I still want to feel like a man. Because when you write that down, you're giving yourself the validation that life often forgets to offer us. So now, if you're ready, go make yourself a cup of tea or a light coffee. Find a quiet place to sit. And let me tell you the story no one has ever told about your body and your emotions at 70 and beyond. Let's begin. Part 1. Ignoring prostate health and how masturbating the wrong way makes it worse. Mr. John, 72 years old, a retired history teacher, came to my clinic on an autumn afternoon. His face carried the calm dignity of age, but his eyes were heavy with an unspoken worry. After a few gentle questions, he quietly said, "Lately, I've been waking up 3 or 4 times a night to pee, but when I stand up, the stream is weak and keeps stopping. And sometimes after I masturbate, I feel this pressure down there, like something inside me didn't get released." He paused, then lowered his head. "I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm starting to feel afraid every time I touch my own body." I listened to those words with full attention, because I've heard them many times before, from many different men, at many different ages. And yet they all have one thing in common. They don't realize that the prostate, that walnut-sized organ, is sending out distress signals. The prostate isn't just part of the reproductive system. It's the control center for several vital functions, from ejaculation to urination to the sensations of orgasm. But after the age of 65, this little gland starts to quietly change. It slowly enlarges, a condition called benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH. And if you're 65 unaware of this, don't understand it, or continue the same masturbation habits from your younger years, then you might be unintentionally harming it day by day. Many older men hold on to habits like delaying ejaculation to build endurance, or forcing their body to climax intensely, hoping to hold on to the sexual power they once had. But what they don't see is this. Every act of suppression puts pressure on the pelvic floor, the area between the legs where the prostate sits, tightly sandwiched between the bladder and the rectum. When the prostate has already begun to enlarge, forcing it to work too hard doesn't just cause swelling and inflammation, it can severely impact your urination, erections, and even your sleep. Some believe that retaining semen as long as possible builds life force, like a form of masculine discipline. But modern medicine tells us the opposite. Holding it in too long, not releasing fully, or ejaculating improperly can cause slight blockages in the seminal ducts, irritating the prostate and triggering chronic inflammation. What they don't realize is that the dull ache after masturbation, the pressure in the lower abdomen, those aren't signs of a powerful libido. They're quiet alarms from a neglected organ. And here's a difficult truth that needs to be said. Some men are living with constant minor pain, frequent urination, erectile decline, and they chalk it up to just aging. But in many cases, the root cause is years of improper self-pleasure habits, repeated unknowingly over time. I once treated a 77-year-old man suffering from chronic prostatitis, a condition where even sitting down caused a dull, stabbing pain between his hips and anus. All because he used to think masturbation helps with stress, so the more, the better, never realizing that the intensity and pressure he was applying were slowly creating pain that built up month after month, year after year. Masturbation, done correctly, can actually support prostate health. It encourages blood flow, clears fluid buildup, helps cleanse the gland, and maintains tissue elasticity. But after age 65, the technique must evolve. It can't be an explosion anymore. It needs to be a release. It can't be force. It must be respect. Because the prostate isn't young anymore. It needs to be approached with awareness, not punished with memories of a body that no longer exists in the same way. If you've ever felt mild discomfort after masturbating, trouble urinating, nighttime urgency, or noticed blood in your semen, don't brush it off. That's your body whispering that something's being forgotten. See a specialist. Speak the truth. There is nothing shameful about caring for your prostate. In fact, it may be the most courageous thing a man can do to protect the quiet life force inside him. Remember, masturbation is not a test of strength. It is an art of sensing. And when that sensing begins with honoring your prostate, you'll notice real changes in your sleep, in your urine flow, and in your experience of being a man. So before we move on, take a moment to ask yourself, when was the last time you truly listened to your body? And if your answer is, it's been a long time, then this video may be your chance to begin again, from a place of gentle understanding. Part 2, Overstimulating Porn, How It Numbs Your Brain and Kills Real Feeling. I still remember one afternoon when Mr. Richard, a 69-year-old former maintenance worker for the New York City subway, sat across from me, his hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. He sighed and said, "I don't feel anything anymore, doctor. Even when I masturbate, it's not like it used to be. It's like I'm just watching a scene, doing a task, and it ends. No emotion, nothing at all." That wasn't a confession, it was a cry for help. And sadly, it's a story I've heard far too many times. With the rise of the internet, just a few clicks can expose a man over 65 to thousands of pornographic videos, faster and more intense than anything in human history. But what most don't realize is that this easy access is quietly ruining something far more precious: the ability to feel true pleasure from real life. When you watch porn, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical responsible for excitement and reward. At first, a simple suggestive image is enough, but over time, your brain starts demanding more to get the same feeling: more intensity, more shock value, more extremes. This process is called dopamine desensitization. In simpler terms, your brain becomes numb. And it's not just the thrill of porn that fades. You start losing emotional connection to real people, real touch, your real body. A friend's handshake, a woman's glance, a soft breath in your ear. None of it feels stimulating anymore. Neuroscientific research has shown that overconsumption of porn in older men affects the parts of the brain responsible for memory, focus, and social emotions. Some of my patients have told me they began feeling slightly confused, forgetful, even irritable after too much erotic content, especially late at night before bed. And perhaps most tragically, you lose your imagination, that sacred gift that should only grow richer with age. When you were younger, you could respond to a soft touch, a sweet memory, a romantic thought. But years of training your brain on hardcore imagery teaches it that only extreme, unrealistic content is worth reacting to. This doesn't just make masturbation mechanical and empty. It quietly damages your relationships, especially if you still have a partner. Because no real human can compete with those artificial, edited images. No one can truly arouse you when your nervous system has been rewired to crave something that doesn't even exist. I once told Mr. Richard, pleasure doesn't come from what your eyes see, it comes from what your heart feels. And to reclaim that feeling, we have to detox our eyes, to give our imagination room to breathe again. You can start by curating what you watch, reducing frequency, and most importantly, returning to your memories, your feelings, and your breath. If you've ever felt drained after watching adult videos, if you've ever felt hollow inside after finishing, you're not alone. Millions of men are quietly struggling with that same emptiness. But you can change that, not by forbidding yourself, but by making gentler choices, softer images, heartfelt fantasies, and real connection with yourself. I often tell my patients to begin with one small act, turn off the screen, and imagine a slow, soulful moment of love. Not with someone else, just with yourself. And the memory of a time when you still knew how to love with your whole soul. You deserve to feel fully again. You don't need shock. You need depth, and that depth is still within you if you're brave enough to peel back the visual addiction this modern age has wrapped around your mind. And if this resonates with you, leave a short comment. I choose real feeling, because sometimes a single sentence is enough to remind yourself that yes, you can still feel if you're willing to return to yourself. Part 3, trying to masturbate like you're young again, while forgetting your body has changed. I once had a patient named Harold, 75 years old, a former bank employee. He came to me with a visible look of embarrassment, his voice dropping as if confessing something shameful. I tried doing it again, like I used to, fast, strong, but afterward I felt dizzy, my heart was pounding, and I nearly fell when I got out of bed. He's not alone. In nearly 30 years of practice, I've heard hundreds of stories just like his. Men living in a 70-year-old body, but still using the same techniques, rhythms, and expectations as if they were 30. And they don't realize they're engaging in one of the most dangerous forms of self-abuse in old age, done quietly, often in complete isolation. Turning 70 is a major shift. The heart doesn't pump as forcefully, nerves react more slowly, skin becomes more sensitive, muscles can't sustain tension the way they used to. But even more importantly, your internal sensations have changed. What used to arouse you 20 years ago might now leave you exhausted, headachy, or sleepless. And sadly, no one tells men this. No one teaches them how to slow down. When an older man masturbates with the same speed, force, and muscle tension he used in his youth, he suddenly overworks his cardiovascular system, raising the risk of irregular heartbeat, post-ejaculatory blood pressure drops, even fainting. Not to mention the strain on the pelvic floor, a region already weakened with age, leading to soreness while sitting, difficulty urinating, or abnormal muscle spasms. And many don't realize these symptoms are linked to how they show love to themselves. Another patient, Greg, 68 years old, used to masturbate daily as a way to keep himself young. But he didn't know that the fast, aggressive rhythm was draining him. After each session, he felt dizzy, legs trembling, and would snap irritably without cause. "I thought I was just getting weak," he said. "No, Greg, it's not weakness. It's that you've been treating your body like it's still young. And this isn't just about physical strength, it's about acceptance." Many men grow older, but still cling to the image of who they were 20 or 30 years ago, and use masturbation as a test. Can I still do it? Am I still the same? But what they don't see is that this seemingly harmless act, done the old way, again and again is feeding a quiet sense of failure, frustration, and shame every time the body doesn't perform as expected. I always tell my patients, you don't need to beat speed, you need to beat the fear of slowing down. Because here's the truth, when you slow down, not only is your body safer, it also feels more. Men who learn to relax, touch gently, combine deep breathing and imagination, they often come back to me saying their experiences are deeper, more tender, more emotional. No more fireworks, but more real than ever. Masturbation at 70 is not a test of strength, it's a conversation with your body, with your breath, and with the part of you that still wants to feel truly alive. If you're still using the old speed and the old pressure, I invite you to try something different. Sit down, breathe slowly, place your hand on your body as if comforting a child, softly without rushing, without a goal, just to feel. You may be surprised to discover that your 70-year-old body can still offer tremors of pleasure if you treat it like an old friend, not an old machine that must be pushed harder. And if you've been feeling discouraged that you're no longer as good as before, let me say this from the heart. You don't need to be who you were to still be fully a man. If this speaks to you, leave a small comment below the video. I accept and love my body today. Because true love doesn't begin with perfection, it begins with presence. Part 4. Masturbating to escape loneliness or boredom. Instead of truly connecting with emotion, there's a strange kind of silence that surrounds men living alone after 65. Not the silence of an empty room, but a deeper quiet inside, where someone used to be. Someone to hold, to touch, to ask, "Are you okay?" When the wife is gone, the children have grown, and old friends have drifted away. The simple comfort of human touch becomes as rare as winter sunshine. And so, many turn inward. They masturbate, not out of sexual desire, but because it's the one thing that still stays with them. I remember Mr. Peter, 70 years old, a retired mechanical engineer, living alone in suburban Wisconsin. During a routine checkup after a few questions about his sleep, he looked at me for a long moment and said, "You know, doctor, there are nights when I masturbate just so I don't feel invisible." That sentence caught my throat, because I knew he was speaking for millions of older men, men who use pleasure as a kind of painkiller for the soul, a numbing agent for emotion, a small gesture that helps them feel like they haven't completely vanished. Masturbation, when done with awareness, can be a deeply loving way to connect with your body. But when it becomes a mindless habit used to fill emotional emptiness, it's no longer connection. It's a form of emotional shutdown. And the more often it's done in isolation, on autopilot, as a way to avoid feeling, the more it wears down the inner world. Many men have confided in me that after they're done, they feel sadder, more hollow, and sometimes ashamed of themselves. They don't know why, but I do, because I've heard this story hundreds of times. Loneliness cannot be healed through physical pleasure. Loneliness needs to be heard with the heart. If you're masturbating out of boredom, fear, or to avoid facing loss, then each time you do it, you're not getting closer to yourself. You're moving further away. I once compared it to drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It might feel like relief for a moment, but over time, it leaves you more parched, more depleted. Some men have told me they feel confused. They don't know where right or wrong begins in this. And I always say the same thing. There's no right or wrong in this, only what's real and what's not. If what you do brings you closer to yourself afterward, then it's real. But if it leaves you feeling lonelier, then that's a sign you're doing it for the wrong reason. Emotion is not your enemy. Loneliness is not a trap. It's an invitation to return to yourself, to befriend your soul again. And if you touch your body with love, with gentleness, with slow breaths and real memories, then it's no longer a physical act. It becomes a small ritual of self-respect, of survival, of love. I once suggested to Mr. Peter that he try approaching it differently. Light a candle, turn off the screen, play a soft jazz record he loved in his younger days, and imagine the first time he touched his late wife. Not to replace her, but to reconnect with the feeling. 2 weeks later, he came back to my office. He didn't say much, just smiled and placed a hand over his heart. I understood. We don't need someone else to feel love. Sometimes being your own life partner is the bravest thing a man at this age can do. If you're living alone, if you've ever masturbated just to get through the day, if you've ever felt like a shadow in your quiet home, then I want you to remember this. You are still here, and you deserve real feeling. If you see yourself in this story, leave a simple comment. I choose to connect with real emotion. Because the moment you say it, you've already begun the journey back to yourself. Part 5. Masturbating without emotional connection makes the brain forget you were ever a lover. I once asked an old patient of mine, Mr. Walter, 73 years old, single for over 2 decades, when was the last time you imagined a loving moment while touching yourself? He looked up at me, brow furrowed as if searching his memory, then gently shook his head. I can't remember. Now I just do it out of habit, like brushing my teeth. His answer stayed with me long after that appointment, because it revealed a truth that most men after 65 are living through without even realizing it. They are no longer lovers, not even to themselves. They are only going through the motions, without emotion. When we were younger, every act of self-pleasure was a journey, full of imagination, emotion, anticipation, and sometimes even a trembling in the chest. But as we age, if we continue the act without imagination, without emotional connection, without meaning, the brain starts to relabel the experience. It no longer registers as an emotional event. It becomes just a physical habit to relieve pressure. And that's when everything begins to quietly unravel. Neuroscience shows that the brain constantly labels sensations based on intention and emotion. If you eat a piece of chocolate with joy and presence, your brain remembers it as a moment of happiness. But if you eat it unconsciously, the brain files it away as a non-event. And if you do that 100 times, you gradually lose the ability to feel joy from what once made you happy. Masturbation works the same way. If every time you touch yourself, there's no feeling, no imagination, no love, then over time, your brain shuts off its emotional response to the act. You may still be able to climax, but there is no feeling, no spark of life, no memory of having once been a lover or of having been loved. One of my patients, Dennis, age 67, confessed that he hadn't been able to imagine a romantic scenario for years. I can't remember what love feels like anymore, he said. I only remember the motions, but not the emotion. And that scared him, because it wasn't just his libido he had lost, it was a part of his masculine identity. We, as men, are not built from muscle and testosterone alone. We are sustained by our memories of love, by the feeling of being desired, of being touched with a glance, of being longed for in silence, of being held by someone's heart. When touching yourself becomes a reflex, the brain no longer responds with emotion, it simply executes a command. And once the brain stops connecting feeling to that behavior, even when the opportunity for love arises, even when someone is beside you, you might find yourself numb, cold, uninspired. So I want you to understand this. Masturbation is not just a way to release tension. It's a chance to remind your brain and your heart that I am still a man who once loved and is still worthy of love. How do you reconnect? Start with imagination. Recall a beautiful memory, your wife's gaze when you were first in love, the soft touch on your wrist, the first time you trembled from a kiss. Don't rush. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Place your hand on your chest, then slowly let it move downward. No need for speed, no goal, just touch to feel to live to love. And one more thing, let emotion lead, not habit. Every time you touch yourself, take at least a minute to ask, what am I feeling inside? Who am I remembering? Do I feel worthy of love today? And in those questions, your brain begins reactivating its emotional circuits. Gradually, the spark returns, the tenderness returns, and you begin to come alive again. Someone once asked me, can I get those feelings back, even at 70? I looked him in the eye and said, feelings don't die. They're just waiting for you to return. If you resonate with this, leave a simple comment below the video. I am still a man who once loved and was loved. Because that is exactly who you are, and you deserve to feel it again, no matter your age. There are things we do every day, small, repetitive acts that quietly shape the soul. Masturbation is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to hide, but it's also not something mechanical. It is a place where you meet yourself again. A moment where you ask your body, are you still there? Do you still feel worthy of love? Through today's video, I hope you've come to see a truth that no one may have ever told you before. That sexuality in older age is not a lost memory. It is a new chapter waiting to be written, one that can be deeper, gentler, and profoundly more human. You've learned how to recognize the silent mistakes that quietly erode your vitality and emotional life. Understand what your body truly needs rather than forcing it like you once did. Reconnect with real feelings, with loving memories, and with yourself. And above all, you've come to understand this. A man who still touches himself with love is a man who is still alive and still worthy of love. If something in this video resonated with you, I warmly invite you to leave a comment below. Just one sentence is enough. Something like, I deserve to reconnect with myself. Because every word you write is not just for me, it's for the other men reading it, realizing they are not alone on this journey. And if you'd like to support us so we can continue sharing deeply meaningful content like this, click the Super Thanks button. Even the smallest expression of gratitude gives our team strength to keep doing this important work week after week. You can continue your journey of self-care and body awareness by watching the video now appearing on your screen, or selecting one from the recommendations beside it. Every single one was created with the same devotion. For you, the man living fully at his age, you are not too old to feel, to love, to connect with yourself starting right here. See you in the next video, wishing you a day of peace, wholeness, and deep emotion.